What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the CBS Sports channel. I'm Matt, and you're watching episode 3 of Fixing the Franchise. This episode is all about fixing the Arizona Cardinals. As always, I will give the rundown on how this works for any of you first-time viewers. I'm going to be taking a team that either underachieved last season or was just flat out bad. From here, I put myself in the shoes of the general manager and fix the franchise. The catch is that I only have 5 moves that I can make. I really want to emphasize that, so it kind of hits home. I only have 5 moves. I won't be able to address every single little need of this team, but I will try my best to put them in a place to succeed going into next season. With that out of the way, let's do a quick overview of the Cardinals' 2023 season. In 2023, Arizona finished last place in the NFC West with a cringeworthy 4-13 record. Aside from the Cardinals, the rest of the division was fairly competitive. Obviously, the Niners are in the Super Bowl at the time that I make this, and could very well have won it all by the time you see this, which I highly doubt. The Rams overachieved this season and made the playoffs, and Seattle was on the cusp of making the playoffs, but still had a very talented young nucleus. This division seems to be filled with perennial contenders, so Arizona has their work cut out for them. In order to get an idea of how bad this team really is, at least this past season, let's look at where the offense and defense ranked amongst the league. Starting on the offensive side of the ball, from an outside perspective, it seemed like the Cardinals' offense was inconsistent all season. This would explain why they ranked 19th in offensive yards. This isn't as bad as face value suggests, though. Starting quarterback Kyler Murray missed the first half of the season, recovering from an injury he suffered at the end of 2022, and missing your franchise quarterback will hinder any team's offense. The fact that the team still finished in the top 20 shows promise. Some of it. Things really clicked once Kyler came back, but this is something that should still be worked on. Now on to the other side of the ball, we have the Cardinals' defense. Cardinals' defense was also inconsistent, but had more bad than good. Holding Dallas to 16 and beating them early on in the season was impressive, but the team also had some poor showings. This defense ranked 25th in yards allowed, which is pretty awful if you ask me. One of these weak points was the secondary, which outside of safety lacks playmakers and depth. This defense should see a decent amount of turnover this offseason. We've seen that this team's had its ups and downs, probably more downs than ups, but there are still some key foundational pieces that we can build around, starting on offense. First off, we have Kyler Murray, who, like I mentioned, only played in the second half of the season. In those 8 games, he put up decent numbers, but went 3-5 in that stretch. He's definitely not a flash in the pan, but he hasn't shown that he's in that top 10 quarterback discussion yet. Murray is a true dual-threat quarterback who has gotten better of knowing when to and when to not tuck the ball and run. His size was a concern, but I feel as though he's kind of proved those concerns wrong. Murray is locked up in a pretty sizable contract too, so we don't really have much of a choice but to keep him. With that said, he is a playmaker, and if we give him another weapon and some protection, he might play like a top 16 quarterback. Staying in the backfield, we have James Conner. Conner had a really nice season despite missing a few games. Conner seemed to catch lightning in a bottle towards the end of the season. That's probably because of Kyler returning. Conner is a bit older for a running back, but as more of a bruising back, his shelf life should be a bit longer than a normal running back. Conner is under contract through 2024, but I could see him returning on like a 1-year deal once that contract's up. He should continue to be a feature back in the Arizona offense for at least the 2024 season. Another important piece of this Cardinals offense in 2023 was Trey McBride. Second-year tight end had a breakout season where he led Arizona in receiving. 4 of McBride's last 5 games, he had at least 6 receptions off of at least 7 targets. Now, McBride looks to be on the cusp of being an elite receiving threat and will give Kyler Murray a safety blanket over the middle going forward. The last offensive player I'm highlighting will be Paris Johnson Jr. The 2023 first-round pick had a lot of ups and downs in his rookie season. However, Johnson played left tackle in college, and Arizona lined him up at right tackle in 2023. Any offensive lineman knows that switching sides isn't as easy as you would think. It feels very unnatural, which would explain any struggles Paris Johnson Jr. might have had. Johnson should continue to develop, and between his upside and the flashes he showed in 2023, he can be a long-term answer at offensive tackle. Moving on to the defense, the first player I'm highlighting here is B.J. Ojulari. Now, Ojulari didn't light up the stat sheet in his rookie year, but did make a couple of solid plays. Ojulari was viewed as a project edge rusher coming into the 2023 draft, which is why he was taking the second instead of the first. He's every bit of an athlete, and as long as he continues to develop, he should be a big part of this Cardinals defense for the future. Going on up one level in the defense, we have linebacker Zaven Collins. Collins has a lot of the intangibles that you want out of an outside linebacker. Like Ojulari, he's a big-time athlete. But Collins was projected to be a linebacker coming into the league and has developed into a bit of an edge rusher. He had a very solid season in 2023, but should look to improve on that going into next season. 2024 should be a contract year for Collins, but I don't think the Cardinals should let him walk. Collins is a versatile weapon that Jonathan Gannon will want to incorporate in this defense. Moving on up one last time in the defense, we're now in the secondary. I hinted at this before, but the only redeeming quality of the 2023 Cardinals secondary was the safety position. The first of those safeties being Jalen Thompson. Jalen Thompson had a great year statistically and should be a foundational piece to the future of the secondary. As long as he can continue to get turnovers and tackles, Thompson will be a key defensive factor. And the last guy I'm highlighting is probably somebody you've already guessed, and that's Budda Baker. Now, Budda Baker has 1 year left of his contract, and the Cardinals have an opt-out this season, but we're going to put that information on the shelf for right now. We'll kick that can later on down the road. Baker sure didn't have his greatest season in 2023, but stats don't always paint the whole picture, and he battled some injuries. Baker has shown throughout his career that he is one of the most versatile and impactful safeties in the league, and it would be a mistake for him to be anywhere except for Arizona. This guy is a complete playmaker who sells tickets and jerseys. We're keeping him around and getting him some more help. There's a decent amount of young talent on this Cardinals team, but the 8 I highlighted will play big roles in 2024 and should be built around. Before I jump into the first of 5 moves that I would make, I want to quickly show you the Cardinals cap situation. As of the time I'm making this video, the Arizona Cardinals have just over $40 million in cap space going into the 2024 offseason. This number will obviously change, but that is where they're at right now. This is a great segue into my first move though. The first move that I would make to fix the Arizona Cardinals is to cut offensive tackle DJ Humphries and wide receiver Zach Pascal. Humphries isn't coming off the best season of his career and had a massive cap hit. Dumping him creates roughly $9 million and opens up the opportunity for Paris Johnson Jr. to move over to his more natural spot on the offensive line, which as mentioned before is left tackle. Pascal is a smaller cap hit and doesn't create the most cap space, but he wasn't involved much last season, only catching 4 of his 13 targets. This money can easily be reallocated. With Pascal and Humphries contracts off the books, Arizona is left with roughly $50 million in cap space. This is a very substantial chunk of change and can go a long way. With that said, we need to keep in mind that the Cardinals have a lot of draft picks and will need to pay their rookies. Now, let's move on to move number 2. The second move I'm making is kind of a 2-for-1, re-signing wide receiver Marquise Brown and extending safety Budda Baker. I figured these moves were similar enough to group them together, and I have good reasoning behind this, so hear me out. Budda Baker's current hit for cap is $19 million, which is a lot of dough. Giving Baker a long-term extension will obviously lock him up for the future and should create some more cap space. The market value for Baker suggests that he gets a 5-year, $92 million deal, which I think is around the right ballpark. This will make cap space as we will probably backload the contract, pushing what he is owed this year back a couple of years. With this freed up cap space, I would re-sign Marquise Brown. Brown's the only free agent starter I felt was worth paying. We will be letting the following players walk: offensive guard Elijah Wilkinson, defensive ends LJ Collier and Jonathan Ledbetter, linebackers Josh Woods and Chris Barnes, and cornerback Antonio Hamilton. Re-signing Brown's the right move here as he's friends with Kyler Murray off the field, so they have great chemistry. He brings speed to this offense, and if we get a true wide receiver 1 going forward, he would profile as a phenomenal second option. The contract we would give Brown is also based on market value. This would be 4 years, $59.5 million, and obviously we would backload this contract so that we have cap room for the next couple moves. Speaking of the next moves, we're on to move number 3, which is signing free agent defensive tackle DJ Reader from the Bengals. Now, Reader isn't a flashy guy on the stat sheet, but he's great on film. Reader fills a big need for Arizona on the defensive line as he is an elite run defender. For anybody wondering, Reader graded out as an 82.2 on Pro Football Focus, which is very, very good. I'm giving him his market value contract of 3 years, $44.75 million, which comes out to just under $15 million a year. The other free agent defensive tackles that I considered were Grover Stewart from the Colts and Christian Wilkins from the Dolphins. Wait, there's more! Moving on to the fourth move I would make, we have another defensive free agent signing. Signing free agent cornerback Kenny Moore II from the Colts would be my fourth move, and I think it's a sizable one. Moore is a plug-and-play starter for this weak Cardinals secondary. He may not have a big frame, but that hasn't stopped him from being a playmaker. He graded out as 77.4 with Pro Football Focus and had 3 interceptions last season. I'm giving the 28-year-old corner a 3-year, $33 million deal to come in and serve as the cornerback 1 for this Arizona defense. I looked into Kendall Fuller on the Commanders and Shaquille Griffin on the Panthers, but rolled with Moore. I'd like to note that Shaquille Griffin is coming off of a down year of his career and still might be in the cards to sign for cheap if I had more than 5 moves. But alas, if you watched episodes 1 or 2 of this series, then you probably know what's coming for the 5th and final move. That is the upcoming NFL Draft. The final move I'm making to fix this franchise is drafting Marvin Harrison Jr. at pick 4 in the 2024 NFL Draft. Marvin Harrison Jr. is one of the greatest wide receiver prospects I've ever seen come out of college, and what's there not to like? He's big at 6'4", he's fast, he can catch the ball, and most importantly, he can run routes, and he runs them well. Harrison Jr. is the consensus #1 player on a lot of people's boards from a pure talent perspective, and if it wasn't a strong quarterback class, he might be the #1 overall pick. With 3 quarterbacks expected to be drafted ahead of him as of right now, that would allow Marvin Harrison Jr. to fall into the laps of Arizona. Marvin Harrison Jr. would take this Cardinals offense to a whole other level, and I'll get into that a little bit more in a minute. First, I'd like to go over what I think an ideal draft would look like for the Cardinals. But before I show you the results, I want to acknowledge that I used a mock draft simulator, so don't get mad if you think there's a player that fell too far. I obviously just covered the Marvin Harrison Jr. pick at pick 4, which is a no-brainer. If he somehow isn't here, I'd suggest trading back and getting a few more draft picks and drafting someone like Rome Odunze, however you pronounce it. At 27, I'm taking Kingsley Sumatea, who would project as this team's right tackle of the future. The offensive tackle from BYU is a little undersized and a bit of a project, but is great in the run game and efficient in pass protection. Pair him and Paris Johnson Jr., and you now have your tackles of the future. At pick 35 in the second, I'm taking defensive tackle Byron Murphy II. What he lacks in size, he makes up for in production. Murphy was a huge piece of that Texas D in college and is a borderline first-round pick. He's athletic, he's explosive, and he will pair great with DJ Reader on the defensive line. We snagged Cedric Van Pran at pick 66 in the 3rd round. Van Pran's one of my favorite centers in the draft. I think he could be a plug-and-play day 1. I believe he's being undervalued in drafts just like Creed Humphrey was coming out of college. With another Cardinals 3rd round pick, I took cornerback Josh Newton from TCU. He's excellent in zone coverage, which I think makes him a great fit for head coach Jonathan Gannon's defense. With Arizona lacking quality cornerbacks, Newton has the opportunity to start day 1. At pick 90, linebacker Peyton Wilson was still on the board, and he's one of my favorite overall prospects in this draft. Wilson is yet another player that will be a plug-and-play, as he can start at inside linebacker. Wilson's big, fast, and a good tackler, and reminds me a lot of the Lions' 2023 first-round pick, Jack Campbell. I grabbed another corner at 104 in Kyrie Jackson. The Oregon cornerback is the definition of height, weight, speed, and adds depth to the corner room, while also possessing all the intangibles that could allow him to develop into a starter. Bear with me here, but I grabbed Zion Tupolau Fatui at pick 136. Anyway, the Washington edge is definitely a project, but possesses so many athletic traits that makes it hard to pass on him. Hopefully he can be a rotational edge in a few years, but I also hope he's not too good where I have to pronounce his name a lot. Dylan Johnson is the pick at 160, another Washington player, this time at the running back position. Johnson can literally do it all except for pass protection. He can learn behind James Conner, and at the best, he becomes his successor, and at the worst, he's a depth running back. I went Eric All at 187. All is a tight end from Iowa, need I say more? But the pick adds depth and also has some potential upside. And finally, the last selection I made in the simulator was Gabe Hall, a defensive tackle from Baylor, who is an absolute unit of an athlete. 7th round picks are almost always gambles, and this one is no different. A practice squad guy or maybe a potential depth defensive tackle. Now, the Cardinals have a lot of draft capital this year. With this Cardinals roster having so many needs, it's near impossible to address every single one, but I tried drafting athletes with high upside who could contribute day 1. I'm a pretty big fan of this draft and want to know your thoughts in the comments. But moving on to the final part of this video, I'll be overviewing what this Cardinals team would look like under my supervision. Starting things off on offense, the backfield remains the same. Kyler Murray is our franchise quarterback, and James Conner has proven that he can be a workhorse back. Having a full season together would make a nightmare pairing for opposing run defenses. We've massively upgraded Murray's receiving core by just adding one addition. Rookie Marvin Harrison Jr. immediately comes in as the wide receiver 1 starting at the X. This puts Marquise Brown at the Z, which is exactly where he belongs. Second-year wide receiver Michael Wilson will line up in the slot where he should have the most success. Wilson will still probably be the 4th receiving option though, as Trey McBride will start at tight end, and he's proven that he's a legitimate receiving threat. This receiving core has the potential to be very, very stacked. The offensive line is where there will have been the most changes. With Humphreys gone, Paris Johnson Jr. moves over to left tackle where he's a better fit. Last year's starting center Hajult Froholt makes the transition over to left guard as rookie Cedric Van Pran will get the start at center. Will Hernandez, who is a mauler in the run game, will stay at right guard, and rookie Kingsley Sumatea will come in and start at right tackle. This has the potential to be a top 10, maybe even top 5 offense if all goes to plan. The two biggest questions are how well will this offensive line hold up, and will Kyler Murray be able to take that next big step now that he has a stacked arsenal of weapons. Moving on to the potential starting defense, DJ Reader comes over from free agency to pair with rookie defensive tackle Byron Murphy on the D-line. Zaven Collins and BJ Ojulari will come off the edge, but I would expect Dennis Gardeck to rotate in as he was productive last season. Rookie Peyton Wilson will pair with Kaiser White as the middle linebackers. I'm hoping Owen Popo can step up and fight for playing time as an inside linebacker as well. Kenny Moore II will play on the outside at cornerback 1 to start, but if he struggles, he'll have to be moved back to the nickel where he played a lot for the Colts. Either Garrett Williams or rookie Josh Newton will play on the perimeter, and the other one who doesn't will serve as the cornerback 3. And the safeties are going to stay the same with Jalen Thompson and Budda Baker. Both are strong starting options. I would expect to see Baker play a decent amount of snaps at corner too. I feel as if I've addressed this defense's biggest weaknesses this offseason, and now there's at least one playmaker at every level. There's also a great mix of veteran players and young talent, which balances everything out. I think the biggest question mark will be at edge, as we need to see Ojulari and Collins continue to develop, but I think Byron Murphy will help get after the quarterback too. This defense has a lot of fun pieces for head coach Jonathan Gannon to play around with, so it would be a lot of fun to see this lineup. Overall, I think this new-look Cardinals team has a ton of untapped potential. As long as this roster can stay together for a couple years and stay healthy, I can see it making a lot of noise. But that's going to be a wrap for episode 3 of Fixing the Franchise. Please make sure to drop a like if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Please make sure to leave a comment on what your thoughts are on this video. Your feedback really helps. And that's going to do it. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this, and like always, stay cool.